Welcome to the Dean's List, engaging conversations at the intersection of entrepreneurship, artistic expression, and holistic health. Experience wellness in full color, where fashion, beauty, and art blend with body, mind, and soul. Embark on a journey that dresses your aspirations in style, paints your life with beauty, and sculpts your well-being in every dimension. This is the Dean's List, where inspiration is always in session. Welcome to the Dean's List, where we are charting the fusion of optimal health, artistic flair, and business savvy. I'm your host, Alison Dean, and today on the Dean's List, we're diving into the dynamic world where high-stakes TV production meets transformative wellness with Hanan Abdelaal. A powerhouse with nearly 20 years in the industry, Hanan has played a pivotal role in developing Emmy-nominated shows and working with top-tier talent. But beyond the glamour, she experienced the intense pressure and stress that came with it. That journey led her to establish RUYA, a wellness initiative designed to combat the relentless cycle of anxiety and stress in high-pressure environments. Join us today as we explore how Hanan is reshaping the narrative of success and well-being, using her unique experiences to guide others toward a balanced, fulfilling life. Sounds perfect. Hi, Hanan.
Hi, that was an amazing intro.
Well, you are an amazing human, so well done. It works, right?
You are.
All right. So, lots to cover. Can you take us through? It's a very interesting story. So, take us through your journey from a successful career in TV production to mindfulness coaching. Like, what inspired that shift for you?
Yeah. So I did a little bit of production, but I mainly did development. And so I basically came up with ideas, would package them, create the marketing materials, create the pitch materials, and then go out to networks and try to sell them.
Mm-hmm.
And collectively, I've been in the entertainment industry for almost 20 years. Doing development, I would say it's like the majority of the time I spent doing development. And my experience in the entertainment industry, which I still have a little bit of a foot in, was a literal stress fest, I would say. But at the time and very early on in my career, especially, I didn't have a lot of the tools that I needed to navigate that stress. And for someone who has ADD and someone who struggles with anxiety and perfectionism, stepping into that world was definitely a whirlwind, and one that I wasn't really prepared for. And so, I remember early on in my career, I really struggled with a lot of anxiety, a lot of comparison, comparing myself to other people, feeling like I was just not like standing, I was not enough, so to speak. I didn't feel like I was smart enough. I was capable enough. And this was just a limiting belief that I started to notice after I started doing some work on myself, that it was following me wherever I was, in all my positions in my career. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point in my career, when I first, was a development assistant, I remember a time where my anxiety was so bad that I would go to work and I would not even be able to speak full sentences. Like I felt like I was speaking another language. I can laugh at it now, but at the time I was like, what is going on? I had no idea what was happening. And so, I hit like a really low depressive state. I was calling in sick to work. I was very, very self-critical. I was definitely like very mean to myself. And, I didn't want to show up because I know that, I would not be able to speak, clearly. And like, obviously I was in a career where I needed to use my voice. And, I just was like in a really low point at that time. And I had no idea what to do to get out of it. And at the time, I had not told anybody. Like, I didn't share that experience with, any of my friends, any of my family, definitely not any of my coworkers. Although I'm assuming they noticed something was off, which made it even worse. Right? There was this like umbrella of shame that was like constantly following me. And that's pretty much where I finally put myself into therapy and I really started like my personal development journey. I was like, I can't live this way. I need to figure out like what the heck is going on.
Yeah.
And what I realized, it was like I was putting a lot of pressure on myself. There was this constant need to be perfect, which is something I learned in childhood, to have it all put together. A lot of times I was pretending like I was in control when I was completely falling apart inside.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I would try to do is control what I could control, which were like external things, right? Like how I looked, like how I showed up, like what kind of car I drove. Like, those are the things that I could control that kind of at the time I was trying to hide this like part of me inside that was like falling apart and like so not in control and like so not confident. And I was still in the mindset towards the end of my career or in the middle of my career, I would say that, I thought that if I just kept climbing the ladder, that I would eventually feel enough. It would bring more happiness to my life. Life would just like somehow just be easier once I got to that point in my life.
Yeah.
And, while it was in some way, like, I'm not going to take away from like, obviously I got paid well, I was, able to financially support myself in ways I had not been able to do before, take vacation, buy myself nice things. But ultimately, how I felt internally was like very unsatisfied. And I was stressed out all the time and I was full of anxiety. And, at that point, towards the end of my career, I had been on a very long personal development journey. And I had taken classes and courses and just like was really invested in my growth and self-awareness and like, just trying to learn who I was and like the things that I wanted and all that stuff. And so in that, I started to realize that while I love being a creative, and that is something that I feel like I will always be and do, and a big part of why I loved my career in that way is because I was able to be creative every day.
Yeah.
There was also so many other parts that I felt like just were not aligning anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, I just started to think like, what is next? Because I had never thought about like, what is next? I was like, this is what I know how to do. And like, what else am I supposed to do? And so, I never, ever, ever thought that I would have started a business. I was not interested in starting a business. And at that, a business in the self-personal development space. It was something I was always really passionate about and invested a lot of time in, reading books and taking courses and whatnot, but just never something I thought it would actually turn into a career. And I kind of just followed my passion and I didn't know how that would I didn't know how that would look. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. And I knew that what I really wanted to do was share the practices and the mindset that really helped me make the biggest changes in my life with other people who are struggling the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And more specifically, like, also bring that to people who are in corporate environments that require a lot of them and are very stressful environments,
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically where, it brought me today. I think at the time at, my last position, I was at a production company called 51 Minds and was the senior vice president of development there. And I remember my boss calling me into his office and I was like a few months away from my contract ending. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to leave and start my business or am I going to continue doing this and just like, do the business like part-time on my free time? And he called me and he said, okay, so the company's being basically folding into another company. And I was like, oh, okay. Like it was the moment where it was like, so I remember I was in his office and I was like, okay, so does that mean none of us are going to have jobs anymore? And he's like, yeah. So basically everyone's probably it's getting folded into another company. The other company is basically taking over. And I remember that moment and I started crying in his office and it wasn't necessarily because I was sad.
Right.
Although, yes, it is sad losing your job because for someone who's always had a job and never got laid off. It was like a shocking moment. But what really made me emotional And by the way, I've never been an emotional person, so it was very weird crying in my boss's office. All my emotions are coming out after being stored up for so many years.
Yeah.
I like, thank you. And he's like, well, what do you mean? I was like, this is the push I needed. Because had this company remained the way it was, I may have re-upped my deal for another 2 years and stayed somewhere where I just knew it was like kind of at that point where I just needed to go. It was time for me to transition into something different. It was not a healthy environment for me to be in. And so although I do love the people I worked with and parts of what I did, I just knew I gotten to the point where I was like, this is not for me anymore.
Yeah.
So it was definitely the push I needed. And so that's basically the direction I started going into.
That was the kick in the butt.
Yeah.
That's what they say. You were kicked in the butt at that moment. Because I was going to ask, like, what was it that like really, forced it basically, right? That was it. Okay. Tell everyone how you came to the name of your company, the company name.
Yeah. So RUYA, it kind of incorporates my background. I'm first generation Egyptian. My parents are originally from Egypt and we speak Arabic, and it's an Arabic word that means vision and dream. And to me, that just, it kind of speaks to just like everything that I wanted to create in this. This was my vision. This was my dream. This was something that I didn't know it was my vision or dream in the beginning, but it was in terms of like my dream, in the sense that the kind of person I wanted to nourish and how I wanted to show up every day, it enables me to do so, and that's what I mean when it is my dream. It is continuing to be able to work on myself while helping others and give back to other people and help them with their stress and anxiety or whatever they're dealing with. So
right. It's a great name choice. Like when you told me what the meaning was, I was like, oh, that's so perfect. Well done, Hanan. Okay. So as a mindfulness coach, are there like core principles or philosophies that like guide the overall approach to wellness and health that you take?
Yeah. So I use a lot of mindfulness techniques. The biggest thing I use is curiosity based transformation. I also have a lot of science backed techniques that I teach people that helps rewire their brain, essentially for just greater well being and happiness in their life. And, I love teaching these techniques. Everything is grounded in science, because I know for me, it was really important to understand the science behind it in a very easy, understandable way. And it kind of gave me more reason to practice these techniques and different methods, because I knew that they worked. Right.
Right.
And, while a lot of the techniques that I teach people to help, ground themselves or, help regulate their system during stressful times, they're really essential. They're, definitely something that we should apply to our day to day. Though my main goal is always to help people create a different mindset, that one that's like really positive and resilient. Because I truly believe that what is going to make the biggest difference in someone's life is how much effort and work they put into their mindset, because that will create that lasting transformation. I think, it's like, it kind of like, the way I think of it is like, I remember having this thought when I was driving. I was like, if we don't have thoughts, we don't have stress or anxiety or overwhelm or all the other things that we struggle with in life. Right.
Yeah.
So the more we can put a spotlight on that and start to understand what is happening internally, our external experience will 100% change. And when you bring this sense of curiosity to your life, to your thoughts, to your actions, to behavior, to other people's behaviors and actions, without judging it as bad and then therefore pushing it away.
Yeah.
When we allow these experiences in and bring a sense of curiosity to it, like a little kid would when they're exploring the world, when they're really young, it's the better we can really start to understand and change the parts of ourselves that are just no longer serving us well, right? Like our limiting beliefs and our negative thoughts that come up. And so with this repetition of action, we actually end up training our brains as a result, how to be kind to ourselves, how to be caring, how to be patient, how to be more accepting of ourselves. And the more we can do that for ourselves, the more we can do it for others. Because essentially, if you're a really self-critical person and you're like tearing yourself down every day and putting all these crazy expectations on yourself, you're going to do you're going to do the same for when it comes to interacting with others as well, right? You're going to expect the moon from people. And so when we train ourselves and we start to incorporate this into our daily life, we then end up, releasing these good chemicals in our body, like, dopamine or serotonin, oxytocin. And all these chemicals really help us to then counter our stress and counter, cortisol, which is our stress hormone. And then also as a result, in part, it makes us feel, happier and more motivated. It makes us feel closer to people. We have better connection with people. We can communicate better. We can think more clearly. We're more creative. We can sleep better. There's all these positive effects that come from it.
Yeah. Okay. So is there something perhaps that you teach that could help someone, perhaps listening or watching, reduce their stress, anxiety, etc.? Because I feel like there is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love teaching people how to emotionally regulate, because I think that is such a must-have practice in everyone's life. And so I'll break it down for you, and I'll give you a little bit of the neuroscience behind it. So what happens when we experience stress, there's a part of the brain called the amygdala, which is in the back of our brain, that lights up, right? So it's the brain's emotional center, and it helps us process our emotions, such as fear, when we're experiencing anxiety or stress. So I'll use an example of something in the workplace. So say you're angry with a colleague because you feel that this person, he or she, disrespected you in a meeting or whatever, right? So what would happen is the amygdala, the part of our brain that produces that stress response, it will think that there's actually like a real life threat, like a bear or a tiger. And to help protect us, it will go into full action mode. And what this does at this point is it actually hijacks our thinking brain. And what's crazy is that we can lose up to 75% of our cognitive abilities. And what this means is that we might overreact to a situation. We might yell at someone or say something like completely out of line that we regret and can't take back later. It's almost like when you see people like, just fly off and you're like, what were they thinking? You're like, okay, they were thinking, after I know the neuroscience behind it, right? Obviously, this leads to really bad experiences for everyone involved. Yourself, the other person. It compromises your situation at work, your relationships.
Yeah.
And because we lose our cognitive abilities and we're not thinking from our logic mind, we tend to make really bad decisions because our judgment is impaired. And so you might not do something just out of the simple fact that this person who made you angry asked you to do it. And even if it's like in your best interest or the company's best interest, right? You'll still deny it. Another thing that can happen is that you just might go into full revenge mode, which I feel like we probably have all been there. We'll try to get payback, or we'll say something really mean, or we'll just completely go into hiding mode, right? Like I know, like you completely check out and not even want to communicate with that person anymore, which I know I've been there a few times in the past. And so what happens is the more we react from this place of anger, or it could be fear, or whatever it is, that strong emotion that you're experiencing, the stronger that emotional reaction will become, and it will become more ingrained. So you're basically training yourself to respond in this way. Okay. And so it kind of becomes like your go-to program response, because that's what your mind is used to. You're like, oh, this is the trigger. This is how I respond, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So we want to practice breaking out of that habit. And so the biggest thing here is an awareness. You have to have an awareness level to know what is happening. And so one way to do this is to get more acquainted with what our emotions feel like in our body, because our bodies are like the cliff notes to our thoughts. And so when we're in a high emotional state, we might not understand what's happening with our thoughts or catch it quick enough, right? We have somewhere of around like over 50 to 60,000 thoughts a day. So that takes practice. And so does, feeling what your emotions feel like in your body as well. But what it can do is it can actually be like an early alarm system that helps us then be able to turn back on our thinking brain, that one that went offline during the stressful response. And so we can then respond from a place that's more logically based and not emotionally based. And so what I like to talk and, walk people through is like this 4-part process, which again starts with awareness. It's noticing what is happening with my thoughts right now, what is happening with my emotions, and it's almost taking like this observer seat to like what's happening, right? Like I like to imagine like my higher self kind of looking down and being like, okay, what's going on right now?
Yeah.
So to determine like how your emotions feel in your body, like for me, like what happens when I get really angry or stressed, my head gets like really warm, right? And then my heart rate like really increases. For some people, their palms get really sweaty. You might feel like a tightness in your chest. And then that's like the early indicator, right? You're like, okay, I'm having this emotional reaction, right? Let me take a second before I respond to this situation and fly off the handle. And then the next step is really just using your breath. So there's something called diaphragmatic breathing, and it's essentially belly breathing. So as young kids, we were naturally, breathing through our bellies. But over time, with the stressors of life, we start breathing through our chest. And that makes us really vulnerable to our stress response. So we want to learn how to use our belly when we breathe. And one way you can do that is you can put one hand on your belly, one hand on your chest, take a deep breath in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, and then exhale for 7. And then just see which part is it your belly going up or is your chest expanding, And then if it's your chest, just like, adjust. And then, you start using your belly to breathe. And what this does is it basically sends a signal to our nervous system to take a chill pill, to calm down. There is no immediate danger. There's not a tiger chasing me or a bear chasing me. And then we want to label and welcome our emotions. So what this does is it basically helps send a signal to our brain to turn back on our logical thinking brain. And so it's about switching the narrative to I am angry, I am sad, I am, overwhelmed, to I am experiencing anger, I am experiencing overwhelm, I am experiencing anxiety. Because essentially we are not our emotions. They're just something we are experiencing at the moment. And when we can detach ourselves from them, it helps create that space, and it sends that signal to your brain to say, this is not who you are. This is just something you're experiencing, and it's temporary.
I like that.
Yeah. And then we can respond from a more mindfully space and, preserve our relationships, our career, actually show up in the world like the way we want to, and not point fingers and say, this person made me do it. This person, pissed me off.
Right.
For me, I use every opportunity as practice, because this is something you actually like really need to put time and effort into. It's a muscle, and it needs to be built over time. And it doesn't mean that because you lost it and went off on someone, it doesn't mean that you can't try the next time, right? So it's an opportunity, just like if it gets the best of you one time, there's the next time, and so on. And then this essentially over time will help you break free of these autopilot emotional reactions that, don't do us any justice and just create more stress in our life.
Amen. That was lovely. Yes. little magical moment with Hanan. I like it. Okay. Yeah, that's good. I'm going to use that. Definitely. Like I could have used that yesterday, but it's fine. We'll move past it and I'll perhaps use it tomorrow. Okay. Okay. So you now offer a range of services. So you do one-on-one coaching, there's corporate workshops, meditation sessions. Like, can you share, what does it look like for you to adapt some of these core philosophies that some of them you already talked about into creating tailored strategies for any of these different formats?
Yeah. So with my corporate workshops, it really just depends on what the company's needs are, so I'll have like a preliminary call with them to kind of discuss like where are they at, where do they want to go, like what are the struggles, what is happening, like what do they want to reduce, what do they want to gain. And so, a lot of people, it does revolve around stress and anxiety. And so I'm working with a company now where I'm actually putting together a tailored workshop that is going to speak more about not only reducing stress, but how to help their employees set boundaries, because what they're noticing is a lot of their employees are burning out, right? And so generally my workshops will include like 1 to 2 meditations and a practice. And that varies depending on whatever I'm discussing with those companies. There is one meditation that I love to teach, which is basically a nervous system orientation technique, which works really good in the corporate space, which plays with like spatial distance and helps you get out of your head and stop the rumination and regulate stress, which is something that is so useful for everyone. It's also really good at cultivating self-awareness and external awareness. And so it's because a lot of times, our external awareness is really important because we get so absorbed sometimes in our thoughts and our emotions that we can lose perspective on what's happening around us. And for me, I think that's a place where I lived for a very long time. I had a very overactive mind. And so I was like, what's happening, in my external environment? I have no idea because I'm so lost in here, right? And then internal awareness is equally as important because it's like we get so consumed by our thoughts that then we forget to like step back to understand what's happening and observe them and not let them like overtake us.
Right.
And then those are like 2 really, types of awarenesses that are really effective for leadership and decision-making, because you have to have a clear mind, to be able, and you have to know like, why are you saying no because you just want to maintain control, or are you saying no for a reason that is helpful for the overall goal, right? And so, and then I offer 2 types of one-on-one coaching. One is to help people identify just like what's holding them back. What are you trying to achieve? Like, what are your goals and dreams? And let's talk about your limiting beliefs, and let's talk about like how we can get you there. And, let's take it, allow me to take the lead in terms of like getting you out of your head and not allowing these limiting beliefs to like help to prevent you from achieving those goals and dreams.
Yep.
And then the other one is, using, those techniques, but also I incorporate like more of like my TV experience in there. So it's more of like a mentorship, sort of for anybody who's like, wanting to get into the entertainment industry or trying to figure out like, what's the best way to climb this corporate ladder or navigate, the dynamics of the industry.
Yeah. That sounds like that might be a lifetime of one-on-one sessions in that case. All right. How do you navigate the entertainment industry? Yeah, you'll be with me for the rest of your life in that case. Yes, right?
Right.
No.
Yeah.
You're like clients for life. Perfect. Okay. This is actually, I found this to be very interesting when I read that you did this. The wellness program that you initiated across 5 different production companies, like, what did that look like? What were the main components of that program? How was, I guess, the feedback that you received? Obviously, it was pretty successful because it sounded like it hit multiple environments, but that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it kind of came out of the blue. I had an opportunity where I was put on this like diversity initiative, and I was like, listening to, the different sectors of that initiative. And I was like, they don't have anything for mental health. So let me suggest it. And so I was like, okay, great. Like, let me just bring, I suggested it to, our parent company at the time, which was running that initiative. And they were like, sure, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. So it was interesting because I had brought something that I was really interested in into a world that wasn't really discussed. And I never thought, I didn't know how to really navigate it in the beginning. I was kind of just like throwing things out and seeing like what worked. My reluctance in the beginning was like, how are people going to respond to this? Because the mindset in that world is very much go, 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 go. We don't have time for ourselves.
Yeah.
But at the same time, everyone is feeling like shit. Everyone's stressed out. They're full of anxiety. And what the biggest takeaway from my experience with that is that people are receptive to it. You just have to provide it for them. Right. And so, as I wish I would have been able to do more in this space before the company got folded into another company, I was able to, put together some events and, partner with, places like Den Meditation to get everyone subscriptions to their online platform. Like they had meditation and breath work. I was able to partner with a seasoned breathwork facilitator, and we rented out a space and we, put on this whole event, and, I invited our parent company and the sister companies. And so I think it was around like 30 or 40 people who came out. And we all got in a room, and I don't know if you've ever done breath work before. There's different types of breath work. I forgot the name of this specific one, but it's one where like people are like crying and like emotions are coming out and you're like sweating. And I'm like, oh my God, we're all about to get in a room together and share this experience together. And I was like, how is this going to go? But I remember like after people were coming up to me and they were like, oh my God, I never in my wildest dreams thought my breath could make that sort of thing. Like people were crying and like having like moments in there, and essentially it's like a detox for your body, right? Which I love breath work. But it was a very interesting experience to say the least. And, we implemented some like in-office stuff, like, we had a gratitude jar in the kitchen and like, had people write like nice little notes to each other, which were really cool. And we did like cold shower weeks, and so stuff like that. And then I was able to transform one of our offices into like a meditation room, which was really cool. It was underutilized because of the transition with the company. But nonetheless, like I think a lot of people appreciated that. And, I think, it took that, there were some things people were more receptive to than others, but I think people wanted to learn practices and techniques and different things that they could implement into their lives to reduce their stress, because everyone was overwhelmed and everyone was like full of stress and anxiety, and nobody was sharing those experiences with one another. And this allowed that, the space to do so and to be able to uplift one another and help each other instead of ignoring it and pretending like it doesn't exist.
You opened the door for it to happen. So I think this is a great example of, especially in a very like high octane environment where everyone is just really focusing on the deal. It's so helpful, I think, what you did. But when the company is saying, we're opening this up to you and encouraging it, because then it makes everyone go, oh, well, I'm supposed to do it now. And I think that's, it's unfortunate that that's what needs to happen, right? That people can't just be like, no, I need a minute, I need to go meditate or whatever. But I think it speaks to just the nature of some of these industries where, it's like tunnel vision and people won't stop unless you say, okay, it's time to do some breath work. So well done, Hanan. Good work on that front. Okay. So this is, I think, curious. In your coaching practice, you must encounter people with some misconceptions or skepticism about, what mindfulness coaching, what meditation is. I think especially people that work in high pressure environments. So are there any like common myths that you've had to debunk, or, how do you convince some of these critics of the real world benefits, you're like, I saw my whole office cry with each other and feel so free. That's how I show them. But I mean, like, yeah, I guess, where else have you seen some of these benefits in the things that you've created?
Yeah, I used to be a huge skeptic, so I get it. And, for me, I used to do this early on, but I don't do it anymore. But I don't try to convince anyone of anything. I think one of the biggest things I've learned is that you just have to meet people where they are. I remember before I really started getting into the nitty gritty of like my personal development. So people who were basically trying to tell me like, you need to work on this, or you need to do this, or this is what's wrong with you, or whatever it was.
Right.
I was like, oh no, it's you. It's not me. Like, it's totally not me, And so, what I've learned is that people have to go on their own journey, and you can preach till next year about the benefits of these practices and whatnot. They have to be in a place in their life where they're like, enough is enough. And that's where I was. I was just like, I can't freaking live like this anymore. Like, I have to do something, and I'm going to start practicing and implementing these things and not just reading about them. And so that's why a lot of the times I do like talking about the neuroscience, because it's like, you can't really argue that. There's proof in the pudding. There's science. There's research behind these practices that have helped thousands, countless, millions, whatever it is, others,
Yeah.
And so there's definitely, I would say, a lot of misconceptions about meditation. People think that in order to meditate, they have to completely shut down their thoughts. And I think if you shut down your thoughts, that basically means you're not living anymore, unless you're like Buddha or something. And it's just nearly impossible. And so what they do is they'll try, they'll sit down for a meditation, and like their first thought they hear of, this isn't working, you need to get up and go. They end up listening to that thought, and then they get frustrated and that they can't turn their thoughts off. And then they decide that it's just not for them, or they're not going to try it again. And so meditation and mindfulness is basically, it's a way for us to train our focus and attention and give us insight into like what is happening internally with our thoughts and emotion, right? So for me, I see it as a way of like, it's a research thing, or it's a way for us to train our focus. And the reason we want to train our attention and our focus is because if we were to imagine our eyes being flashlights, everything that they illuminate basically shapes our brain, right? Which in turn then influences like what our thoughts are, how we behave, like what our actions are. And so this means where we put our attention, what we put our attention on really matters.
Yeah.
And so essentially you want to have more control over your attention, because it can be the most powerful way to reshape your brain. And so for me, what I use meditation for is to train myself to focus. Either it's like I do a full body scan, or I'm like, bringing myself back to my breath repeatedly, because my thoughts will be very intrusive. So I just have to it's like you're also building resilience as well. Because the definition of resilience is like, after failure, doing it again and doing it again and doing it again without losing that hope, right? And so you're building your resilience, you're building your focus, but also there's also a part of of meditation where it's like you can, and this is a mindfulness meditation, but it's like an open awareness meditation where essentially you can just sit as an observer of your thoughts and yourself, right? And so you're like, oh, I hear a thought and it's telling me to go text my friend because I forgot to do it yesterday and I really need to tell her this. And there's times where I almost listen to that thought and like get out of my meditation, because then I'm like, oh, okay, I'm bringing awareness to that thought right now. I am not going to listen to that thought. I'm going to let it pass by, and I'm going to do that later. And this is the time where I'm dedicating to my meditation, right? And then I will refocus or reground myself with my breath or a body scan, or like I'll start to like follow, when I say body scan, I mean like just like, using the sensations in your body and every part of your body to kind of like you train your focus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these are essentially ways that you can do that. And the more you can do that, the more then you can start catching your thoughts earlier. You can start catching what your emotions are, and then you can start regulating your emotions. You can start, dismissing the thoughts that are not helpful and,
Not true.
not pushing you forward. And there's just so many benefits of it.
Yes. Okay, so like I guess if someone is a bit skeptical, like you were so long ago, is there like a simple, like what would be like the gateway for someone like that? Or is there like a little, like, maybe if you try this, see how it feels? Like, is there something that you think is helpful for the skeptics that doesn't feel like you're forcing anything, but just like, hey, maybe try this? Is it what we like, the exercise that we went through uh just a little bit ago, to like just help regulate someone and see how that feels? Or is it something else?
Yeah, I mean, like, listen, like everything is going to feel different with each person. So there's like no like one way by any means.
Right.
It is about, trying a few different things and seeing like what works best for you.
Yes.
Um, you know, just doing like 5, 6, or doing enough, a minute of breathing in the morning, like the diaphragmatic breathing. That's something that would be really helpful. Just spending 5 minutes in the morning, just checking in with yourself and being like, okay, like, what am I feeling? What do I need? Like, okay, what are the intentions I want to set for the day? How do I want to show up in the world so that I
Yeah.
align my decisions and actions with, who I want to be and like how I want to progress in life? There is really so many different things you can do. I think for a lot of people, the duration of sitting there for 20 to 30 minutes or an hour, whatever it may be, might be a little overwhelming in the beginning.
Yeah.
And the best way to create a habit is to start really small, like 2 minutes, 1 minute, 3 minutes. It's more impactful than doing 0 minutes. And it's really quick. And we all have 2 to 3 minutes in our day.
Let's hope
Um,
so. Yeah.
and you don't have to be sitting there closing your eyes either. You can be mindful brushing your teeth. You can
Hmm.
bring mindfulness with you in the shower.
Mm-hmm.
You can be mindful while you're eating, walking, driving. There's,
Multitask.
yeah,
Multitasking mindfulness. That's a
yes.
thing. You should pay for that domain.
Hold on one second, let me buy it.
I like it. Okay, so transitioning to entrepreneurship obviously can be challenging. You had the kick in the butt, so it was even more sort of like, okay, now's the time. So, what were some of the initial challenges that you faced establishing the coaching business, and did they unlock any interesting opportunities that you did not suspect or expect to happen? Yeah.
Entrepreneurship isn't something that I ever saw myself doing. I was in the mindset. It's crazy because I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My parents and my brother. Um, it just was never. I think it was because I never really found what I
The
want.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, like a real passion, right? I thought TV was a passion, but I don't know that it necessarily fully was. Right? I think there was parts of it that was. Um, and you know I think it's definitely a struggle. For me, I am constantly working through these thoughts, limiting beliefs of telling me that I'm not enough, that I need to be doing more. My perfectionism makes me, sometimes like, not want to do things like I'll check out. I think it's been the one of the most rewarding and hardest experiences of my life because you're building a business, but you're also working through all those like limiting beliefs that
At the same time.
are ahead of you, right? Yeah. And so it's like breaking down all these walls. And, I have done a lot of work and put a lot of effort into, breaking those down, but they don't go away overnight. And I had like 30 some years of conditioning before I started breaking these down. And so it's going to take some time. And so it's just pushing forward, right? It's pushing past those thoughts, pushing past those limitations, and just continuing to do what you need to do and having that vision, and then also having your why. It's like, why are you doing this? Like, what is it that is going to, you have to have a very clear why, because it's what's going to keep you moving forward.
Yeah.
And it's also going to help you from quitting, essentially, and like throwing in the towel and being like, I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry, did I answer your question? I don't know if I answered the
I
question.
think you did. I mean, I think for you, at the point that you've decided to start your business, you knew, I mean, you had already been sort of, I think, wrestling with like, do I stay in TV or not? Right. So that moment came where it was like, now's the time to do it. And then, so really the thing that you knew you had to overcome with yourself was just some of those, like, can I do this thing? But you can, because it's like in your DNA, because your whole family are entrepreneurs. So, and then maybe it's like wrestling with that too, just mentally, like, oh, I have a whole family that's doing this. Am I going to be able to do it? Right. Because then you're just like comparing yourself to, your blood, and you're like, oh God. So there's a lot of dynamics probably at play with what's going on for you. And I think it's a testament. Keep going, and you're going.
Yeah,
So I love that. That's
absolutely.
good. This is one that I know you're excited to talk about. So you've mentioned helping clients transform painful patterns into powerful possibilities. That's a good bumper sticker, through meditation and personalized coaching. So can you share like a memorable transformative story from some of your work that illustrates this painful pattern, powerful possibility equilibrium?
Yeah. So one woman I worked with, she was a mom of two,
Yep.
and she was someone who, like many moms, never take time out for themselves, right?
Mm.
So she was really constantly like drained of energy, and she was giving everything that she had to other people. And because as a result, she was really never replenishing her own reserves. Um, and a lot of times because of that, she was feeling like overwhelmed and exhausted. And I get it. Like, you're a mom, you have a career, you have a lot on your plate.
Yeah.
Um, but what I was able to help her with was gain a little bit more clarity in, both her professional and personal life, because I was actually helping her with TV development as well. She wanted to, she was in the middle of developing a TV show and needed some help with that, right? So we did talk about ways in which she can prioritize her self-care and manage her stress more. And so, I think the biggest thing for her was like she started setting time aside for herself.
Nice.
That not only improved her energy levels, but her overall well-being. And then obviously, because she was giving back to herself, she was able to give back to her family more and in a more healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
And she was more present and effective with that as well, and in her professional role. And it for her, she started off small. Like, she felt like all she could give was like 10 minutes in the morning for herself. And so she started waking up 10 minutes earlier, and she started doing some meditations and like moving her body, and like just like the simple little things that we overlook, and then we're like, why do we feel like shit? It's like, it really is the little things that really start to add up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and then like they compound, and then they really motivate us to keep going and trying new things, and like putting more time and effort into ourselves. And I think a lot of people, especially moms, and I don't know anything about being a mom because I'm not a mom, but I do have a lot of girlfriends who are moms.
Yeah.
And I think, the biggest thing is like, I don't have time. And I 100% get that. And especially people in the corporate world are like, the last thing we want to do is put one more thing on our plate to have to worry or focus on or whatever. But it's also like, how committed and dedicated are you to really wanting to create change in your life? Like, do
Yeah.
you, like, what will happen if you spend the next like 5 to 10 years doing what you're doing now, the way you're doing it now? Like, essentially, you're going to get to a point where you're going to burn out, and you're
Mm-hmm.
going to get to a point, and like, burnout affects people in different ways. Sometimes it takes years to recover from burnout. And so it's like about just managing those emotions and managing those things that you can
Yeah.
before you get to a place where you're just like laid out and you can't do anything, and you just want to check out, and you just want to sit on a couch and watch TV all day because that's all you can manage to do, and that's all the energy you have for it. By the way, I sit on the couch and watch TV a lot too, but I am also very conscious of it. And when I get to that point, I'm like, okay, like something needs to change. Like I can sense myself trying to check out right now.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
not that we don't all check out and need that in our lives. It's just a matter of being conscious and aware when we're doing it and when it might get to an unhealthy point, and start creating more stress and anxiety in our life.
Yeah, that's a good transition actually, because my next question is, what does wellness mean to you?
Yeah. For me, wellness means just free self-expression.
Hmm.
Honestly, it's the freedom to be able to fully express yourself
Mm-hmm.
as you feel internally without all the muck and years of conditioning. It's really essentially getting back to yourself and your true essence. And it's like living from a place of like real connection and authenticity. It's having this self trust and this self confidence and self assurance and like just knowing who you are as a person
Yeah.
and not letting other people's thoughts or eye rolls or opinions or anything affect or impact that, right? That's because that's when you start living for other people and not for yourself, right? And so it's just really like, what is your true essence and getting back to that? Because essentially, we all went through different experiences in our life that shaped and formed who we are and what our thought patterns are.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those experiences are just not really helpful. And we start to then create stories in our minds about things that are not helpful for us and don't push us forward. And, it's
Right.
basically how our
Yep.
minds work. And so it's like getting back to the place where you're like, okay, I don't need to believe this thought. I don't need to believe this limiting belief. Like, I know who I am at the core. I know I have it in me. Like, who is that person? And it's connecting to that inner voice and being.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. So connecting to that inner voice. So like, how do you do that every day? So like, in terms of Hanan's like daily non-negotiables, or
Mhm.
how do you maintain your wellness given the type of role you now have to help others manage their own wellness? Like, what does that look like for you? What are things that Hanan must do? Obviously you said you meditate now, and you are certainly more conscientious of your thoughts and your thought patterns and those needs and breathing, but yeah, when you wake up, like, is there like a Hanan routine that happens at wake up time where if you don't do it, it might not be so great that day?
It's funny. Um, like you said, meditation, mindfulness is big for me. It's an everyday thing, but if I miss a day here and there, I don't get crazy about it because then I
Okay.
don't want to go into like, you know, self defeating thoughts either.
Yeah.
And so, for me, the biggest thing is building that attention and being there for myself as well,
Mhm.
showing myself that compassion and care as someone who was like very self-critical for so many years. And by the way, I know there's people out there who that works for them. For me, not at all. I tore myself down, and I was creating a lot of stress in my life as a result. And so now it's like, I'm going to care for myself the way that I would want someone else to care for me, but I'm going to give that to myself. Um, it's also about like waking up every day and being very conscious and intentional about what you're going to put your time towards, what decisions you're going to make. How are you going to align yourself with that version of yourself that essentially are deep down, but want to become, right?
Yeah.
And continuously bringing yourself back to that state of, is this going to help me or is this going to defeat me? If it's going to defeat me, then it's like something I need to like release. And the quicker you can get into that mode, the better. And that obviously comes with like repetition and practice, and just being bringing a lot of awareness to your life.
Right.
For me, also, nature is really grounding for me. I love being in nature. So if I can do a hike or, my jam is taking like really amazing vacations that require a beach in them. But that's not obviously a daily thing, but I do live somewhere where I can just go to my balcony and like look out at trees and mountains and to me that is so grounding for me. Like I can go out there and just be like, oh my God, like let me just investigate this tree that's right in front of me and just like throw my awareness into it and just like, I don't know, it just really grounds me and puts me back into the moment.
I was happy that you said your balcony, because if you didn't, I was going to say, what about your balcony? Okay, go on.
I'm so grateful to be where I'm at for sure. I don't know if there's anything else. Like, to be honest with you, like I ebb and flow. Like, you know, I have these affirmations that I put on my mirror in my bathroom, but they have been up there for like a few months now. And so I feel like I don't even see them anymore. But, you know, I will wake up and say things like, you know, today's going to be an amazing day, or, you know, something amazing is going to happen today. And like really start with like some sort of positive thought in my mind.
Love that.
And then like, yeah, I mean, if it's not in the morning that I'm feeding myself affirmations, then it's like throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes at night, you know, maybe this is like every other day, or sometimes it's every day. I'll listen to like a hypnosis tape, and hypnosis meaning not like they're going to teach, you know, they're going to train me how to like run around like a chicken, but it's, you know, our brain, we can rewire our brain with the repetition of words and actions. And so it's like different hypnosis tapes that, you know, when you go into a state of sleep, you know, it can bypass your prefrontal cortex and go straight to your subconscious, and then start to like rewire that. I don't know if I'm explaining that in the best way, but it's just like words that help, like, you know, uplift you and like train your mindset.
I like it.
And so that's something that I incorporate as well. I would say those are pretty much like staples for me.
Yep.
And then just connection as well.
No exercise.
Oh, yeah, of course. I do exercise. I move my body. That is a big, huge thing. Yes, I work out like 3 to 4 times a week. I'll do my Pilates. I'll do my yoga. And that's super helpful, obviously. And then also connections really big as well. Sometimes because I do work from home and I do work alone most of the time. You know, I sometimes will feel like my mood is shifting and I'm like, what's going on? And I was like, oh, you know, I haven't really connected with anyone, like my, you know, my friends or family, or like really, you know, putting, you know, I feel like we all need connection in our lives, right?
Yeah.
And it's really the quality of, you know, the people in our lives that really, you know, contributes a lot to our happiness and well-being. So connections for me as well.
Okay.
Connect too, not like
good connections. Yeah, you need like fill your cup connections.
Yeah.
Right? Otherwise, you have all the connections that you need to purge because they're stressing you out, right? And adding to the burnout. So we don't need those connections.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay, you've made it, Hanan, to the quickfire round.
Oh,
and
yes.
the goal of this is really don't overthink. Answer first thing that comes to mind. Hopefully they're easy. Okay.
I'm telling you to overthink or not to overthink. Okay.
Okay. Well, some of these won't be that they'll be easy. Okay. Early bird or night owl?
Night owl.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Favorite color?
Blue.
What was the first paying job you've ever had?
First paying job. I worked for my parents, but then official job, I worked at Fatburger when I was 15 and a half, prepping the food in the back.
Love it. Favorite cuisine? Not Fatburger.
Mexican and sushi, I'm sorry, but they're like tied.
Okay. Well, okay. So favorite Mexican restaurant, favorite sushi restaurant? Go.
La Fuentes, which is out here in LA. And then sushi, it's the Katsuya group. So I live in Sherman Oaks, so they have like 3 restaurants down the street from me. So it's amazing.
Did I take you to Las Fuentes?
Have we been there together?
I mean, I grew up with Las Fuentes, but I'm like, if we didn't, that's a travesty. That's like seriously sad if you and I never went to Las Fuentes. Okay.
Las Fuentes, I feel like salsa and beer in Las Fuentes are kind of like...
No, I feel like Las Fuentes is better. Like anytime I went to salsa and beer, I was like, I still want Las Fuentes.
Oh, okay.
Isn't that weird? I know.
No.
People in LA would be like, I cannot believe what you just said, Allison. Like there's definitely a salsa and beer faction that would be like, they would cancel me for saying that. But I will, I think, always be like, there were times where I traveled internationally, Hanan, and I would come back and would want Las Fuentes. Like it was like one of those, like I needed, like that was like the representation of LA to me was Las Fuentes.
It's also like really, really, really good. And it's amazing. So yeah, I get that.
So good. Okay, this is a good one for you. What's the favorite country that you've traveled to?
You know what? What is my favorite country? I want to say Greece.
Oh, okay. I said first thing comes to mind. It's good. Stick
Oh,
it.
Greece and Italy. I'm sorry. Italy is my jam.
Okay, Greece and
I
Italy.
have to answer for all of these. I'm sorry.
Okay, what's the one app that you can't live without?
Sadly, I don't want to say Instagram, but it's the app I feel like I frequent most, which again, it's not great.
Okay.
What I can live without Instagram though. So what can I not live without that is such a good question. Yelp.
Yelp. Oh, okay. You're the first person that said Yelp. Okay, I like it. What's
Everything.
the one word you would use to describe your business journey?
Transformative.
Okay. If you could have any entrepreneur, anyone, as a mentor for a day, who would it be?
Dr. Joe Dispenza.
I thank God you said that because with all the things that you've already said, I was like, she hasn't said his name once, but she said rewired and she's using all the Dispenza stuff where I was like, okay, thank you. Thank you, Hanan. What's a book that has significantly influenced your mindset?
There's one called I think it's called The Mindset by Carol S. Dweck. And it talks about fixed versus growth mindset. And it was, I feel like the first time I actually realized I had a fixed mindset. And I was like, holy shit. Okay, we're fixing this.
We're going to fix the fixed mindset. Perfect.
Yes.
I like it. Besides your own, what is another favorite small business?
The Dean's List.
I didn't pay her to say that, but I thank you. I love you. If you could instantly acquire one new skill, what would it be? Instantly.
I want to fly.
Like a bird.
I want to come back as a bird so I can just fly.
That's a good answer. If you
Really
could time travel to any period in history, which era would you visit?
That is really good. I've been really into Bridgerton lately. So it might be that era. Or it would be the future. Oh, travel back, you said, not to the future. Maybe that era then.
Okay, Bridgerton time. Okay, I like it for the outfits. All right. And then if you weren't doing this, your current role, what else might you be doing?
Vacationing on a beach.
I was going to say travel critic. Okay, that's fitting. That's perfect. All right. A couple more. So let's look ahead now. What new initiatives or projects or just anything related to your business are you excited about?
I'm really excited about. I'm partnering with someone I actually met at a silent retreat years ago, and she's an executive producer. She's been in the entertainment business as long as I have, and we're in the initial stages of creating essentially a platform and a company that will specifically cater to the entertainment industry and essentially be like a one-stop shop that will address like all the struggles of the industry and like really speak specifically to people in that world and be like, okay, like here are the resources that you can use to overcome, the stressors and, coping with the uncertainty of the business and how to build your resilience. And, eventually we would love to like scale it up. So it's like people are coming to us to help them put together retreats and we're offering coaching and workshops. And, we would love to, as producers and people who have been in the TV industry, start creating content around mental health. And, I think it would be, just all encompassing, but, more targeted towards people in that world, the entertainment world.
Cool. Okay. Now we're at the advice point, Hanan. So what advice would you give to a new entrepreneur? It could be someone looking to, make a similar transition as you, but someone that wants to start their own business.
I would say, listen to your gut. What is the most caring and loving decision can you make for yourself? Could that mean like you quit your job that you hate and then you sacrifice something else as a result in your lifestyle or whatever it is? Or does that mean staying there a while longer while you on your off time try to build up your business? It just depends on what feels the best for you. I remember my coach asked me that question and I really started applying it to everything in life. Cause it's I remember when I started, my journey in entrepreneurship, I was like, okay, I have to struggle. I have to be sleeping on people's couches. I have to downsize everything. And honestly, it really depends on the person. What are you willing to sacrifice? What are you not willing to sacrifice? You don't have to follow someone else's journey.
Right.
And you can make it work for how you want things to be done. I would also say, stay away from people who say you can't.
Oh, yeah.
If you have a vision and a passion, don't let anything get in your way because it is already hard enough on its own. And so I say surround yourself with people who are going to freaking uplift you and people those are in the industry that you want to be in, who can help you grow and you can learn from, and then you can continue building yourself. And I would say the last thing would be to get a coach. Someone who can keep you accountable, someone who can really help you get out of your head and stay on track. And for me, that's been such a transformative experience. Obviously, I am a coach, but I have my own coach. And that's been just game changing.
Those are good tips. I like it. I was like, get a coach or get a husband, right? One or the other. Man, I don't know. For me, I'm like, I feel like my husband does a pretty good job. But yeah, no, you're right. I support that. I ship it. Okay. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you were hoping I would, or just anything else that you want to touch on that we didn't touch on already?
Nothing's coming to mind now. I'm sure I'll get off here and be like, oh, I wish I would have talked about that.
Well, you can always do an Instagram highlight on everything that you wished you would have said, and that'll be great content to capture online. Perfect. Yeah. All right. So in that case, Hanan, how does everyone find you? Share all the ways someone can find you.
I am on Instagram. My Instagram handle is _RUYAHA. I have a website that is RUYACO.org. I think that's pretty much it.
Okay. All right. And I feel like there was something you wanted to offer to the Dean's List group, community, people.
Yes, absolutely. I would love to offer the Dean's List viewers with a free 1.5 hour one-on-one coaching call. And this is for anyone who reaches out to me with the code Dean's List. The first person who reaches out to me will receive a complimentary 1.5 hour one-on-one coaching call with myself. And then obviously anyone who wants to learn more about my workplace workshops can visit my website. Again, that's RUYACO.org.
I'm so curious who the first person is going to be. This is very interesting to me. I'm like, who's going to use the code first? I'm like, and then anyway, okay. Now my brain is going in many directions. Okay. Hanan, thank you for being on the Dean's List.
Thank you.
It was
so fun.
So fun. So fun. Great. I'm so happy that you think it was so fun. Great. Okay. Well, we love you and see you next time, right? And thank you all for tuning into this episode of the Dean's List. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform to stay updated and follow us on Instagram at official_Dean's List and YouTube at It's Official Dean's List. I'm your host, Alison Dean. Until next time.